Hey, Lisa, welcome to Shaboom.
Thank you so much. Do I dance when I say shaboom?
Yeah,
or
you
just
do. Of course
yeah?
you do. Shaboom,
Shaboom.
shaboom. Da 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 da. Of course. Yeah. You look great today. You obviously put on makeup.
I did. That
I,
happens very infrequently since I stopped working.
yeah, I have a makeup story that you may remember.
Hmm.
We are doing a MasterCard event in Fort Worth. You remember MasterCard was the
Yes.
sponsor
Hmm.
of the tournament in Fort Worth. And they want me to film something for their guests that are coming in. They want me to walk the golf course and
Oh,
talk about the
yes.
holes and all this. Well, they put makeup all over me,
Hmm.
and I'm sweating like a hog,
Hmm.
and I'm so miserable. And I finally get my handkerchief out, and I wipe off the makeup, and I turn to them and say, I can't do this. What you're going to do is film the golf course, and then I'll do it live.
Hmm.
And I did. So that's my
Well,
one
may
time
may
wearing
I
makeup.
may I add to that story
Yes, you may.
because I was watching you being filmed, not doing a good job, and you were kicking the tree. And I went to my client. I said, I think we have an issue here. And so we all huddled together to come up with plan B, which ended up to be better than plan A, which is really the story of our lives.
Exactly, because it didn't involve makeup.
It did, it, it involved you just doing your thing and bringing the best of you. And that's what happened.
Yeah,
But yes, I remember you kicking the trunk of the tree and I went,
not good.
NASA, I think we have a
Yeah,
problem here.
we have a problem. Okay,
Yes.
we didn't have to tell people that part, but we did. And it's live and in person. All right, you grew up on Long Island,
Oh,
right?
yes. Yes.
In the 1960s,
50s.
50s and 60s, innocent time, different time. Talk about that. Talk about Stony Brook.
Stony Brook.
Okay.
Yes. Wow, I don't like to talk about myself, so this is funny. I loved my childhood. I loved Long Island. Um, when I got to high school, we were a big lacrosse team. I was actually on one of the first women's lacrosse teams in Suffolk County. But it was a wonderful place to grow up. We were near the beach and weather was great, and truly loved my childhood and everything about it. So loved high school, loved it all.
You know, it's interesting. I had George Herfler on the other day, and he grew up in a suburb of Philadelphia called Levittown, which was one
Ah,
of the first of the mass-produced, towns after this. And there were a lot of those type of towns on Long Island, right?
well, actually, I was born in Levittown.
Wow.
So that is the first real development that Levitt built. And that was in Nassau County. So yes, and we actually visited it, my sisters and I, last year. And it is still a real development. And that is the first of its kind.
Yeah, I'm reminded that the Brooklyn Dodgers, so many of the Dodger fans had moved to the suburbs. They had
Hmm.
moved to Long Island.
Hmm.
And Walter O'Malley, who owned the Dodgers, realized that so many of his best fans were going to the burbs. And so he wanted to build a new stadium, instead of Ebbets Field. He wanted to build a stadium where now the Barclays Center is. He wanted to build it there because that's where the Long Island Railroad comes in to Brooklyn and the
Sure.
subway system. So all at the same place. And he felt like, they can ride the train in to ball games and back. And of course, Robert Moses, the famous Robert Moses, supposedly owned land in Flushing,
Mm, mm,
where
mm.
Shea Stadium ended up going, and said, no, you're not going to build Dodger Stadium here. And so he moved the Dodgers to Los Angeles, and I guess it worked out. But it was interesting. Why did you go to Delaware? What made you go to the University of Delaware?
One, I got accepted.
Okay, that's always a good thing.
I wanted to be Ralph Nader. I wanted to be a consumer affairs professional. So back in those days, you had to be a home economics major. So I applied to Cornell and Syracuse, University of Delaware, Virginia Tech. Boy, I remember every one of them. I think my mother had me apply to about 30 schools because she was afraid I wouldn't get in. And I ended up getting into a few. And then I thought University of Delaware was just one beautiful, 4 hours away from home. I did love my home. I didn't want to go too far away. And that's what I did. But once I got to the university, and I was in a home ec degree, which when I do these speeches to sports marketing professionals and they ask, how did I get to where I got to? I say, well, first, you major in home economics. And you do get this blank stare for two reasons. One, if you know what home ec is, they can't believe it. And two, most people don't know what home economics was. So after about a year, I said, I'm not gonna do this because I don't want to be a lawyer. And I understood you had to be a lawyer to be a consumer affairs person. So I started to kind of go more of the PR route. And of course, sports marketing wasn't a thing until I met Mr. Rick Jones. So that's why I went there, because I had the major I thought I wanted. And like most students, you pivot and you just go a totally different route. And I love the school. I still am on the board there. I go there frequently, and always proud that I went there.
Now, when you were in high school and college, did you go away to spring break? We talked a little bit about spring break today. Yeah. Can you tell me any stories, or do you try to forget those?
Can I remember?
So where did you go?
Oh, always Lauderdale. You went to Fort Lauderdale, and we drove. And we got into, I don't know what year that Volvo was, but it was old. And we would say, you know what, let's leave now. It'd be 7 p.m. and you drive all night. I can't even. And if my bonus children, when they were in college, did this, I would be a nervous wreck. But you never told your parents anything. You just went and did. And
there were no tracking devices. There were no cell phones.
There was no sunscreen.
Yeah, it's the truth.
We had albums with tinfoil, and we put iodine or baby oil
Baby oil.
And,
yes.
Yeah. And that's what we did. Not proud of it. But again, I still look good.
Yeah, exactly. You had to have a tan. What was Charlotte's line was Anita tan, Anita man. That was the line at spring break. It was that kind of thing. All right, what got you to Atlanta? That's kind of a crazy story.
Yeah. So I had great internships in college. I worked in Manhattan and Bristol Myers 2 years, and then Gimbel's on that is no longer in existence. And I was commuting 5 hours a day from Stony Brook to the city. And one of my college roommates said, I'm going to move to Atlanta. Do you want to go? So it was actually my parents said, yes, you do want to go because this is not the life for you. So that's what I did. I moved to Atlanta because of my college roommate. And as the story goes, I didn't have a job. So this is 1982. And I was a temp. So I was a secretary. And then I worked for the temp agency until I got fired. And then I cried. And they said, okay, you can work for us again. So I did. And then in the newspaper, I saw an ad to be a secretary receptionist at Days Inn's headquarters on Buford Highway. And so I became a receptionist secretary at Days Inn's. And then after a couple of years, I saw an opening for Six Flags, and I was the assistant manager of PR and promotion at Six Flags, which I loved, loved, loved. And I think I was employee of the week or something. And then I got laid off after like 2.5 years. And then Cohen & Wolf hired me. And I was an account executive there until the gentleman in the next cube which was you, left and came back, and he called me and he said, I got a job for you. And that's how it all started.
Did you work on the Six Flags business at Conan Wolf? Was that while they hired you? You worked on the Chick-fil-A business, I remember.
I had Chick-fil-A, Courtyard by Marriott, WFOX Radio. I think that those were the main ones.
I have Bob Hope coming up in a few weeks on the show.
You do.
Yeah, and great stories of that era. Both Hope and Cone, they always called me Coach. That was a coach. It was all because I've been a coach, and they never called me by my first name. They always called me Coach, and he still does that to this day, which is kind of fun. But you had an amazing career. I mean, you really, really did, and you earned it all. But you were in the sports marketing business at a time there weren't a lot of women. And so, you became involved in WISE, which I think has helped to the growth. I do believe Title IX played a role in why so many women are in the sports marketing business today, because so many of them were athletes and saw that they had equal opportunity as athletes, and then felt like, well, why shouldn't I have equal opportunities? In the business world. But it was, when you first got into it, it was still a good old boys club in a lot of ways. And in many cases, I can remember being in meetings where you were the only woman in the meeting.
That was often the case. And what I say to people is, I didn't concentrate so much on who was in the room. I concentrated on myself to be the best in the room. And however that happened, I worked towards that. So I really did pay less attention to, oh my gosh, like look around. But if I was the best that I could be, then I felt very confident. And there were some times, absolutely, when you felt a little uncomfortable. But my second point is, I was surrounded by men like yourself. Many of my clients, Rick Dudley, the men I worked with at Octagon, Advantage, Strategic Sports, that were unbelievably supportive. So I don't take 100% of the credit for being the best in the room, because often I wasn't. But I do thank the men that were around me, who knew that I had the potential to be a great professional in the sports marketing world. And you saw it before anybody else. And the joke was, in the beginning, when we were just starting out, like, I would have Sports Business Journal on the outside, and then the inside, who knows what I was reading.
Cosmopolitan.
Probably. But you were like, oh, Lisa, you got to read this. You got to read this. You got to know. And I'm like, yeah, I got it. Yeah, not a problem. And then if you think about it, what we did for a living, it was sports, but it was business. The sports was just around me. And I always said, what I did for a living, I could do for ballet, I could do for the opera, I could do for baseball. Really didn't matter as much. We were just in a great, fun industry and had a blast.
Well, and not only was it a great industry, I think we were at a really interesting time. One of my laments today is, I think we overanalyze. Everybody wants so much data before they make a decision about anything. And I do believe clients took bigger risk. I heard a story the other day where, somebody would say, I got 5 projects, 2 are layups, 2 are a little risky, and 1's really risky. But if the really risky one hits, it's going to be big. And so you'd balance yourself. And I just think people would take more chances. We've talked before about Mava Heffler, who was our client at MasterCard, and she was a woman that was a why not versus a why. I don't want to sound like a fossil today at 71, but it's almost like everybody I'm dealing with today wants to know why.
Mm.
And I want to say, why not? Number one, it's not your money. Number two, don't you want to be great? And people, I think they just want to keep their jobs. They just let me hide. And nobody seems to want to do big ideas.
It is challenging, and I've been retired 18 months maybe, so not too long ago. But you got to prove, you got to prove, you got to prove, and you have to analyze, and you analyze before, you analyze after. So I do think that prevents people from taking the big risks, the big swings, as you would call it, and and that's too bad. But once in a while, you still have hope, and you still see these nuances of great things that are happening, especially for women in sports. So it's still out there, but probably a little bit few and farther between.
Yeah, I call it analysis paralysis. And I think the ones that are doing the best job, Ally is one I'm watching carefully, where Ally looked around and said, women are the chief financial officers of their families and
That's
have
true.
been negated and neglected from a financial services standpoint. We're going to double down on women, and to reach women, we're going to double down on women's sports. And
Hmm.
have done a really pretty great
Nice
job
job.
of positioning themselves differently in the marketplace that I think is adding up to increased profitability for them and increased exposure for their products and services. You had a chance, first at Advantage and then at Octagon, to travel the world. Tell me some of the favorite places you went to and some of the favorite events you went to and why those were really neat for you.
Well, you know what? I was going there too to talk about that next. And when you hired me, this is what you told me. You said sports marketing is going to be great. You're going to eat big shrimp at hospitality events. You're going to meet famous athletes, and you're going to make a lot of money, which with you I didn't see. But thank you for trying on that part. And you're going to travel the world. So I had not traveled outside of the United States before working with you, and
Besides driving to Fort Lauderdale.
and true, which did have many parts different in
Yeah.
that world.
Yeah.
But yes, I traveled to Barcelona for my first global trip. I think I was in the last row. It was right by the bathrooms. I do remember that, and that story's for a whole nother day if you ever want to share that story about the cruise ship. Anyway, I love traveling globally. And when you think back, do you wish you had done things differently? And I still will answer your question. Um, I think that I should have done more research about where I was going. We're always so busy. I barely knew what the currency was and how much the tipping was and keywords. Like I was horrible at it. Having said that, I always felt, even though I didn't know the language, Americans are very lucky because English is the international language. I smiled an awful lot. And that just opened doors probably more than any research I could ever do. And I always say I smiled with sincerity. Um, where I loved, um, I was sent to Hong Kong for probably 3 months at one point in my career. And anytime you get to go somewhere for a long time, you really appreciate the culture. I loved it there. I think South Africa will always have a special place in my heart for FIFA World Cup 2010. And despite maybe the venues not being exactly what we had thought, that was such a tremendous opportunity. And this will be a very wishy-washy answer, but wherever I went, I found people were genuinely lovely. And if you put aside your ego, if you put aside, um, I don't like the term ugly American, but back then, that they had to eat, I had to eat what I was used to eating. If you had flexibility, um, everybody just opened up their doors. So there wasn't one place that I I wouldn't go back. I mean, I got to go to Egypt. I've seen the world, which is funny because now in retirement, I don't need to really go around the world and see things. I'm working on seeing the United States, which is unique in of itself. So Europe was wonderful. You and I had fabulous trips everywhere. But I would say South Africa is probably very near and dear to my heart.
I always tried to, like you, not look like the ugly American. Don't wear shorts and tennis shoes. I mean, try to dress like you've been here before, but also eat the cuisine. The only place I couldn't do it was when I was going back and forth to first the Soviet Union and then to Russia for the Goodwill Games. The food was so bad. And I mean, all you ate was smoked salmon and vodka. I mean, every place you went, it was vodka this, vodka that. And I think the last trip I made to St. Petersburg, I think I lived on Snickers bars. I just ate Snickers for like
I
a
had
week.
rye bread ice cream there.
Oh, yuck. I mean, it was crazy.
You and I had one too many oysters
Yeah, in Brussels.
in Brussels.
That cost me, both of
And
us.
me.
But yeah, it was not a pretty story. 18 months in retirement. What do you miss? What do you don't miss?
When I'm 66, and when I started to hit 63, 64, very politely, people, whether I worked with them or just friends or family, they go, "So, when are you going to retire?" And I said, "You know what? I'm going to know. I'm gonna know when it's time." And I just knew. And I am blessed with a 30-year plus career with again, you and Advantage and Octagon all together. And I just knew, and I got to leave at such a lovely time in my career and with the company. And I don't look back on, oh, I should have worked longer. Now there are people like you and someone who wrote me yesterday with a nonprofit I work with, and they go, "Oh, I bet you really miss working." I really don't miss working. I love to have the ability to wake up and I look at my phone and Wordle, time for Wordle. I do my Wordle. I look at my emails, which are few and far between. I read my e-letters. I babysit 2 days a week for my grandson, wears me out. I work out. To have control of your calendar, I can still pinch myself every morning. And I don't know, is my mind getting a little mushy? Maybe, I guess so. But I asked myself this question. When you wake up, do you want to keep answering the emails and working with people and blah, 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 or do you want to have your own time? I wanted my own time. I still mentor, especially women. I still try to help college graduates or anybody get a job. I still do that. I am on the board of WISE. I feel there's one more nonprofit I should do, maybe locally in my community. But I love it.
Well, we have, and Charlotte has more than me, maybe, but we have a 3-year-old grandson here that stays with us regularly, and she'll pick him up today and spend the day. And I'll tell a funny story about him last week. He finally got his first real boy haircut. Okay. So he had long hair, and he goes to this special barber because he hated going get his hair cut. His mama would have to do it, but he was put in a Spider-Man car and then got his hair cut, and he got it cut and really, really short, and it looks really, really good. But he looks like a little boy now instead of, the toddler that he was. But when he got through, his mama said, well, how do you like it? He goes, I wanted it to have no hair like Big Daddy.
And he really calls you Big Daddy?
He calls me Big Daddy, and he's my best pal, and I'm his best pal, and we do everything together and hang out together, and it makes Charlotte crazy because he'll see her and he'll say, hey, Graham, where's Big Daddy?
Yeah.
And she's like, am I chopped liver? I'm
She's
taking
doing
care
all
of
the
you
work.
today. I'm doing all the work.
I
I'm
know.
feeding you. I'm teaching you to read. I'm doing all this. And you want to know where Big Daddy is. Well, Big Daddy's out of town. I'm sorry. So it's that kind of thing. Let's finish with this. You talk about wanting to travel in the U.S. Where have you not been that you want to go?
Well, we just got back from New Mexico.
Cool place.
We stayed, we did a bunch of places, went to Los Alamos, which was fascinating, the Oppenheimer Manhattan Project, went to Santa Fe, went to Taos, and then we went to Ted Turner's resort, Bermejo, and that was an honor to be there. Beautiful, 550,000 acres. I learned a lot about what he has done for the environment, and that was a wow. Went to Montana. That was 18 months ago. That was a wow. So more of the national parks, not so much the cities, because you and I, we've been all over there. We went to the restaurant you recommended in New Mexico.
The Rancho Chimeo. Was it good?
Uh-huh. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
So yeah, I always ask you where I should go. Some more national parks ish. And Canada, probably some Canada too.
Yeah, like Western Canada, like Banff or Lake Louise.
Exactly.
Some of those places. I haven't been to the Eastern Canadian islands like Newfoundland or Prince Edward Island.
Oh, that's delightful.
And I want to do that. That's an area that's high on my bucket list.
We did Nova Scotia and PEI a while ago, but that's just beautiful.
Yeah. Well, this is a podcast really about and aimed at baby boomers, and it's great for our listeners to understand you can have a great career and then have a great post-career. Yeah, the life doesn't end just because you've retired from your job. There's a whole bunch of other fun things that are exciting, and you can do whatever you want or you can do nothing.
I know. The hard part is keeping up with everybody. I've had so many, I have so many friends through my career, and you're like, my stars, how am I going to do this? And that makes it hard. But, life goes on, and your group does get a little bit smaller, not for any reason except for time, and they're busy, and I don't want to bother them because they're working and I'm not. But I am so grateful to you for giving me the career that I have had, and I won't say more so we don't cry, but I have just been blessed with the people around me that have supported me and allowed me to do what I was
guess what?
I was good at.
We've been blessed by you.
Well, thank you.
Lots of people blessed by you. There are a lot of women that you have mentored that have done great, great things, mostly because you just said to them early on, I believe in you. And that's, somebody believing in you is where it starts. It's just, it's the same thing. You got your grandson now. It's just, you tell him every day, I believe in you. You're going to do great things. You're going, it's going to be a fun life. But listen, I can't thank you enough. I told you this would be fun. I told you it was better not giving you the questions in advance. We'll just have a conversation. I love you. And I thank you for being a guest here on Shaboom today.